The leaked documents were damning. 73 pages of classified negotiations that would shatter everything Brexit voters thought they had won. Hidden deep within a Brussels server, these files contained the blueprint for Britain's silent surrender back to European Union control. And when they surfaced at 11:47 p.m. on a cold November evening, they triggered the biggest constitutional crisis since 1066. Thor 6 pix. The whistleblower was a mid-level civil servant in the Cabinet Office. Sarah Mitchell had spent 12 years working in the shadows of Westminster, watching governments rise and fall. But what she discovered in Prime Minister Keir Starmer's private files made her blood run cold. This wasn't just policy adjustment. This was the systematic dismantling of British sovereignty while the public slept. Mitchell's hands trembled as she uploaded the documents to every major news outlet simultaneously: the BBC, Sky News, The Times, The Telegraph, even The Guardian. She knew her career was over. She knew she might face prosecution, but she also knew that democracy itself hung in the balance. The first document was titled Operation Homecoming, Strategic Reintegration Framework. Beneath that innocuous heading lay the most explosive political scandal in modern British history. Starmer's government had been secretly negotiating Britain's return to the European Union for 8 months. Not just closer cooperation, full membership, complete regulatory alignment, euro currency adoption by 2027. Every Brexit promise was being systematically reversed in backroom deals that violated the most fundamental principle of British democracy, the consent of the governed. The leaked timeline revealed the shocking scope of Starmer's deception. Phase 1 had already begun quietly in March. British immigration officers were taking guidance from EU officials on asylum processing. The Northern Ireland Protocol was being expanded to cover English ports. EU environmental regulations were being adopted wholesale through parliamentary statutory instruments that nobody read. Phase 2 would launch in January. The customs union would be rejoined through a series of temporary trade agreements. British courts would begin accepting European Court of Justice precedents. Sterling would be pegged to the euro in preparation for full currency union. Phase 3 was the nuclear option, a new referendum scheduled for 2026, but this time with only one question: should Britain complete its return to the European Union? No option to maintain the status quo, no choice to remain independent, just surrender disguised as democracy. The most damning document came from Starmer's own hand, a personal memo to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, dated just 6 weeks earlier. The British people made an emotional decision in 2016. It's our responsibility to guide them back to rationality. Brexit was always temporary. The European project is forever. Those 28 words would haunt Starmer for the rest of his political life. They revealed a prime minister who viewed the largest democratic mandate in British history as a mistake to be corrected rather than a decision to be respected. When the documents hit the internet at midnight, Britain exploded. Social media erupted with hashtags like Starmer betrayal and second Brexit trending globally within minutes. The leaked files were downloaded over 2 million times in the first hour. Ordinary citizens who had never engaged with politics were sharing classified government documents like birthday photos. The most viral post came from a construction worker in Sunderland named Dave Thompson. His shaky phone video, recorded in his kitchen at 1 a.m., reached 14 million viewers in 18 hours. I voted leave. My dad voted leave. We were told it was done. We were lied to. They think we're too stupid to govern ourselves. Well, we'll show them what stupid looks like. They think we're too stupid to govern ourselves. Well, we'll show them what stupid looks like. That sentiment exploded across working-class Britain like wildfire. From the Tyne to the Thames, from Liverpool to Luton, the reaction was unanimous. Rage, pure, incandescent fury at being betrayed by their own government. Nigel Farage was in his element. The Reform UK leader had spent 7 years warning that the establishment would never accept Brexit. Now he had proof. Standing before Union Jack flags at 6 a.m., Farage delivered the most devastating political speech of his career. They called us extremists for wanting to control our borders. They called us fascists for wanting to govern ourselves. Now we know what they really think of democracy. It's an inconvenience to be managed, not a principle to be respected. His words cut through the political noise like a sword through silk. Within hours, Reform UK's membership surged by 400,000. Donations flooded in from ordinary voters who felt utterly betrayed. For the first time since Brexit, Farage looked like a statesman rather than a protest figure. The Conservative Party's response was swift and merciless. Party chairman Oliver Dowden called an emergency press conference for 7 a.m. Standing before number 10 Downing Street, he delivered a statement that would echo through history. The Labour government has committed the gravest betrayal of democratic trust in modern British history. They have secretly negotiated away our sovereignty while lying to Parliament and the people. This is not politics. This is constitutional vandalism. Baking Liz. Conservative MPs descended on Westminster like an avenging army. David Davis, the former Brexit secretary, was apoplectic. "I spent 2 years negotiating Brexit. Every clause, every comma was fought for. Now Labour wants to throw it all away in secret deals made behind closed doors. This is exactly what we warned would happen." But the real earthquake came from an unexpected source: the Democratic Unionist Party. DUP leader Jeffrey Donaldson didn't just condemn the leaked agreements, he withdrew his party's support from the Good Friday Agreement review process. "If London can secretly renegotiate our relationship with Europe without consulting Northern Ireland, then Belfast must reconsider our relationship with London." Those words sent shockwaves through Whitehall. Northern Ireland had always been the most complex part of Brexit negotiations. Now the DUP was threatening to destabilize the entire constitutional settlement that had brought peace to Ulster for 25 years. In Edinburgh, Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf seized the moment with surgical precision. If Britain can rejoin the EU through backroom deals, then Scotland can pursue independence through the same methods. Westminster's betrayal of democracy justifies extraordinary measures. Within hours, the Scottish Parliament was debating emergency legislation for a new independence referendum. This time, they weren't asking London's permission. They were declaring it a constitutional right based on London's own precedent of ignoring democratic mandates. The international reaction was equally explosive. In Brussels, European officials tried to maintain diplomatic silence, but leaked WhatsApp messages revealed their true feelings. One EU official's message to colleagues was devastating. "Starmer makes this too easy. The British people voted for sovereignty, but their Prime Minister secretly negotiates surrender. We get Britain back without firing a shot." In Washington, the reaction was less diplomatic. President Trump's statement was characteristically blunt. "Britain voted to be free. Now their leader secretly sells them back into slavery. This is exactly why America fought the Revolutionary War. Some lessons have to be learned twice." The economic response was immediate and catastrophic. Sterling plummeted against the dollar as currency traders absorbed the implications. If Britain was rejoining the euro, holding pounds made no sense. The FTSE 100 crashed by 12% in pre-market trading. British government bonds yields spiked as international investors questioned whether London could honor commitments made in secret. But the real damage was political. By 9 a.m., Labour MPs were receiving thousands of calls from furious constituents. Party headquarters was overwhelmed. Local Labour offices in leave-voting constituencies were surrounded by protesters. The party that had campaigned on respecting the referendum result was exposed as secretly plotting its reversal. Starmer's inner circle was in freefall. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who had publicly supported Brexit during the 2019 election, was nowhere to be found. Deputy Leader Angela Rayner cancelled all appointments and refused to take calls. Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who had called Brexit voters idiots before joining the government, was frantically trying to distance himself from the leaked negotiations. The Prime Minister himself remained locked in Downing Street, meeting with crisis management consultants and loyalty testing his cabinet one by one. Sources inside Number 10 described an atmosphere of complete panic and paranoia. Starmer trusted nobody. Every aide, every advisor, every minister was a potential source of further leaks. His first public statement came at noon, delivered from behind the famous black door of Number 10. Starmer looked haggard, his usually immaculate presentation showing cracks under pressure. The documents circulating online represent preliminary discussions, not government policy. Britain will always maintain its sovereignty and independence. But the damage was done. Nobody believed him. The leaked documents were too detailed, too specific, too damning to be dismissed as preliminary discussions. Starmer's credibility was shattered in a single morning. The political opposition smelled blood in the water. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak called for an immediate vote of no confidence. The Prime Minister has lost the trust of Parliament and the people. He cannot remain in office after secretly negotiating away our independence. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey, despite supporting closer EU ties, was equally scathing. "Democracy requires transparency. Secret negotiations that reverse referendum results are not democracy. They're tyranny dressed up as technocracy." Even within Labour, the rebellion was growing. Veteran MP Graham Stringer, who had voted Leave, publicly called for Starmer's resignation. "I joined the Labour Party to represent working people, not to betray their democratic choices. This Prime Minister has forgotten which country he serves." The leaked documents revealed something even more disturbing: the involvement of foreign actors in British domestic politics. Tony Blair's Institute had received €2.3 million from EU sources to facilitate dialogue on European reintegration. Several pro-EU think tanks were secretly funded by Brussels to produce research supporting closer ties. Most shocking was the role of major corporations. Goldman Sachs had quietly lobbied for euro adoption, believing it would increase London's financial integration with Frankfurt. German automotive companies had promised increased UK investment in exchange for regulatory alignment. French energy giants had secured preferential access to British markets through the secret negotiations. Britain was being sold piece by piece to foreign interests while being told it was pragmatic politics. The street protests began at 2 p.m. Spontaneous demonstrations erupted in dozens of cities simultaneously. These weren't organized political rallies. They were organic expressions of democratic fury. Ordinary people, teachers, nurses, builders, shop owners, taking to the streets to demand their votes be respected. In Birmingham, a crowd of 50,000 marched from the Bull Ring to the city council offices chanting, "Respect our vote." Police estimated it was the largest political demonstration in the city's history. In Newcastle, protesters surrounded the Labour Party regional headquarters. Banners read, "Democracy denied" and "Starmer out." Local Labour MP Chionwara tried to address the crowd, but was shouted down with cries of "traitor." The most powerful image came from Stoke-on-Trent, the Brexit heartland that had switched from Labour to Conservative in 2019, specifically over EU membership. A photograph went viral showing an elderly woman holding two signs. "I'm 89. I voted Leave in 1975 and 2016. I won't live to vote again. Respect my voice." That image crystallized everything wrong with Starmer's secret negotiations. Brexit wasn't just about trade deals or immigration policies. It was about democratic self-determination, the right of a people to choose their own destiny. Starmer was stealing that choice through bureaucratic subterfuge. Parliament erupted when it reconvened at 2:30 p.m. for emergency session. The benches were packed, the public gallery overflowing, the atmosphere electric with tension. When Starmer rose to speak, the Conservative benches erupted in a wall of sound. "Resign, resign, resign." Speaker Lindsay Hoyle struggled to maintain order as Labour MPs sat in stunned silence. Many were learning about the leaked documents for the first time. They had been kept in the dark by their own leadership about negotiations that would define Britain's future. Starmer's statement to Parliament was a masterclass in political evasion. These discussions were exploratory in nature. No commitments have been made. Britain's independence remains paramount in all our international engagements. Conservative MP Steve Baker was having none of it. Will the Prime Minister confirm that Phase 2 of Operation Homecoming includes rejoining the customs union by January? Will he deny that EU officials are already stationed in British ports? Will he explain why British taxpayers are funding Brussels bureaucrats through these secret arrangements? Starmer's responses were wooden, scripted, unconvincing. He refused to answer direct questions. He claimed documents were taken out of context. He accused the opposition of manufacturing crisis for political gain. But the most devastating moment came from his own benches. Kate Hoey, the veteran Labour MP who had campaigned for Leave, rose slowly to her feet. Does the Prime Minister believe that secret negotiations, reversing referendum results, represent the democratic values this party was founded to defend? The chamber fell silent. A Labour MP was publicly questioning her own Prime Minister's democratic legitimacy. Starmer's response was painful to watch. The Honourable Lady knows that all governments engage in preliminary discussions on international matters. It wasn't an answer. It was surrender disguised as diplomacy. The Scottish National Party's Stephen Flynn delivered the killing blow. The Prime Minister speaks of preliminary discussions while Phase 1 is already operational. EU officials oversee British immigration decisions. European regulations override British laws. British courts defer to European precedents. When does preliminary become permanent? When does discussion become surrender? By 6 p.m., the polls were devastating. YouGov's emergency survey showed Labour support collapsing from 43% to 31% in 12 hours. Conservative support surged to 38%. But the real shock was Reform UK, jumping from 12% to 21%, their highest polling in party history. More damning was the breakdown by geography. In Leave voting constituencies, Labour support cratered. Seats they had held for decades were suddenly competitive. The working-class voters who had returned to Labour after the Corbyn years were fleeing again. The evening news coverage was brutal. BBC News led with crisis of trust, while ITN announced government in freefall. Sky News ran a rolling ticker of Labour MPs refusing to defend their leader. But the real damage was being done online. TikTok videos of the leaked documents were reaching millions of young voters who had never heard of the Maastricht Treaty but understood betrayal when they saw it. Instagram stories shared by influencers made complex constitutional issues accessible to Generation Z. The algorithms amplified the anger. Every share, every comment, every reaction drove the story higher in feeds. Traditional media gatekeepers couldn't control the narrative when the source documents were freely available to every smartphone user in Britain. International markets were in freefall. The pound hit its lowest level against the euro since 2022. British government bond yields spiked as investors questioned political stability. FT futures pointed to massive losses when markets reopened. But the political earthquake was just beginning. At 8 p.m., a second tranche of leaked documents appeared online. These were even more damaging. Secret polling commissioned by Downing Street showing that 62% of Britons opposed rejoining the EU. Starmer knew his policy was deeply unpopular. He was pursuing it anyway. The documents revealed focus group findings that were politically explosive. Voters feel patronized by suggestions that Brexit was a mistake. Direct reversal would be seen as elite betrayal. Gradual reintegration must be accomplished through administrative action rather than democratic consent. Those words revealed everything. Starmer's team knew the British people opposed their agenda, so they decided to implement it in secret, using bureaucratic stealth rather than democratic mandate. The reaction was swift and severe. Nigel Farage called an emergency rally for the next morning. They think we're too stupid to understand our own interests. Tomorrow we show them how wrong they are. Conservative MPs demanded Parliament be recalled for a vote of no confidence. Liberal Democrats, despite supporting EU membership, called for transparency and democratic process. Even pro-EU voices were horrified by the methodology. Former Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, despite supporting closer European ties, condemned the secret negotiations. Democracy requires consent. Policy implemented through deception isn't democracy. It's manipulation. By 10 p.m., Downing Street was under siege, not from protesters. Police had cordoned off Whitehall, but from Starmer's own MPs demanding answers. Chancellor Rachel Reeves arrived for crisis talks. Foreign Secretary David Lammy followed 30 minutes later. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper was photographed entering through the back entrance. Sources described cabinet ministers reading Starmer the Riot Act. Several threatened resignation unless the European negotiations were suspended immediately. Others demanded a complete reversal of policy. A few suggested Starmer should consider his position. The Prime Minister was isolated, his authority evaporating in real time. Every ally was reconsidering their loyalty. Every supporter was calculating their exit strategy. The government that had promised competence was delivering chaos. Meanwhile, the constitutional implications were becoming clear. If a British government could secretly negotiate away sovereignty, what did democracy mean? If referendum results could be reversed through administrative action, why hold referendums at all? Legal experts were already preparing challenges. Renowned constitutional lawyer David Pannick QC announced that judicial review proceedings would be filed within days. Government lacks authority to surrender parliamentary sovereignty through secret agreements. This exceeds executive power under our constitutional settlement. The European Court of Human Rights might also intervene. Leaked documents suggested that EU reintegration would require British courts to prioritize European law over parliamentary statute. That raised fundamental questions about democratic accountability and national self-determination. As midnight approached, Britain faced its gravest constitutional crisis since the English Civil War. A prime minister caught secretly betraying his manifesto commitments, a government pursuing policies that contradicted referendum results, a democracy where votes apparently didn't matter if they inconvenienced the elite. The leaked documents had exposed more than policy disagreements. They revealed a worldview where ordinary people couldn't be trusted with important decisions, where democracy was an obstacle to good governance rather than its foundation, where Europe was a destination rather than a relationship. Tomorrow would bring fresh revelations, deeper political turmoil, and possibly the end of Starmer's career. But tonight, Britain was discovering what happened when its leaders forgot they were servants, not masters, of the people who elected them. The crisis was just beginning, democracy itself was on trial, and the verdict would reshape Britain forever.